Hello, everyone. Welcome to this freeform episode of the Mindful in Minutes podcast. I'm Kelly, and today we are going to talk about what is definitely one of my favorite, of all time meditation styles, which is loving kindness meditation. This is a style that it was one of the first styles that I was introduced to, and I think it's the one that really sparked my love for meditation. It was the one where I was like, wow, this is powerful. So this has an extra special place in my heart. And I can't believe that we haven't done a loving kindness meditation 101. I know we've done T.W.I.M, which we'll talk about a little bit, which is a kind of like a style. What's the word I'm looking for? Like an offshoot of loving kindness meditation. But we haven't just talked about basic bare bones loving kindness meditation. And I am really excited to be sharing it today. And before we dive into the meditation, I want to check in for a second. How are we doing? I personally, not that you asked, but I want to share how I'm doing. um, I think it's the eclipse. I've really been feeling it. I've been checking in with my woo-woo astrology friends, and I'm like, girlies, because they're all women, the ones that I know. I'm like, girlies, what is going on with this eclipse? Why am I so grumpy? Why am I so heated? Why are my children bickering with each other and me? And why do I feel burnt out when I'm just waking up in the morning? And I am, happy to report that this is potentially a side effect of the eclipse. And I don't remember, you guys know, I like astrology. I dabble in astrology. I'm intrigued by it, but I'm not an astrology person per se. But man, am I feeling it. And so I just wanted to check in. How are we doing? I've been a little testy and kind of for no reason. And that's been interesting for me. It really has been like a stop, time out, turn inward, reflect. I've been meditating on it. I looked up this meditation to help me release in the eclipse. I don't think it worked very well because I don't know. It just seems like I'm just a little grumpy and I don't even know why. So I share that because, one, thank you for holding space for me and sharing that. My whole family is bickering with one another right now over silly little things. And if you're feeling that way, I hold space for that too. And, I'm pretty sure I said I was grumpy the last episode too. And I don't know. I just want you all to know that sometimes meditation teachers get a little bit grumpy. And honestly, that grumpiness and just kind of feeling just on edge a little bit, and I'm not sure why, but honestly, that is what inspired this freeform meditation or this freeform episode topic, because truly, truly nothing puts you in a better mood faster, in my opinion, than loving kindness meditation. And it has really been helping me, whether it's the eclipse, whether, I don't know, I'm just tired and cranky, or I think I'm also overstimulated a little bit. Baby Poppy has really found her voice, and oh my gosh, is she gonna be just a woman of words. She's got stuff to say, and her brother has stuff to say, and Queen Mila has stuff to say, and I feel like there's always a noise and there's always something under my foot that I'm stepping on. And I think that overstimulates me a little bit. Even though I love those little cherubs so, so much, they are always making a sound, and someone is always leaving something, any of them leaving something that will inevitably end up directly underneath my foot. So, I've been using a lot of loving kindness meditation. I really have. And truly it is helping. It's, like I said, it's not only one of my favorite styles of meditation, I think because it was one of the first that really opened up my eyes to the magic of meditation, but it just puts you in a good mood. It is really hard to feel bad and feel grumpy or feel as grumpy or as agitated or overstimulated or whatever it is. at the end of your practice compared to how you started. And so it's just one that just feels really loving and soft and warm. And I really enjoy this style. So I'm really excited to share it with all of you. And one note before I jump in. So I want to just remind everyone to make sure that you are following Mindful in Minutes, that you are subscribed. There's been some updates, some like iOS updates and things like that. And it has unsubscribed a lot of people. And so I've been hearing from a lot of people that they're missing episodes or that they're not subscribed anymore. So if you're listening, just check while you're listening to this. You can make sure that, it's usually like the little plus button on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can hit like the follow button or wherever you're listening, because some of the updates on our phones, I know most of us listen to podcasts via our phones, has changed the way that people get their podcasts. And so it's unsubscribed a lot of people. So let's just make a little, double check. And I think that's my only PSA. I don't really have much to share other than the task at hand. So that's it. Let's dive in. Here is the plan for the day, looking over my notes. So we're going to start with very high level. What is loving kindness meditation? A little bit of the historical context, some common teachers that you may know, I'm sure you know them, but you may not know that they have roots in their beginning loving kindness meditation. I'll share a little bit about T.W.I.M and my experience with loving kindness meditation, and then like basically what are some of the benefits, like why is it so great? And then the steps to practicing it. How would you do it? Although Sunday's meditation is going to be, I've already recorded that one because I was inspired while I was writing my notes. And I was like, I just want to create this practice. And it's a longer one. I think it's about like 18 minutes or so. But I really like it. So that's coming up on Sunday. It's just kind of like a daily, like traditional loving kindness meditation practice. And then I think we're going to end with just like some simple tips on how you can kind of integrate loving kindness meditation into your life, and then some of the differences between T.W.I.M and traditional loving kindness meditation. That's what I have on my notes. Of course, we will see where the wind blows us, but that's the plan for now. So loving kindness meditation. It is often just called loving kindness meditation. Sometimes you will see it shortened to LKM. It's often referred to as metta meditation. It is also referred to as metta bhavana. I did try to look up the pronunciation, and some said bhavana and some said bhavana in the Buddhist tradition. So I apologize because I know those both can't be right. So that means one of those was just wrong. And it really, loving kindness meditation, it finds its roots in like these ancient contemplative practices, and it is deeply rooted in Buddhism. And now the term metta originates from the Pali language, and it translates to loving kindness, or sometimes it translates to benevolence. And this form of meditation, it does have this really kind of rich historical lineage because it dates back to the time of the Buddha himself. And that has been documented in ancient texts. So it is old, it is great. And one of these kind of well-known passages that refers to loving kindness meditation is found in the Metta Sutta, where the Buddha instructs his disciples to radiate loving kindness to all beings in all directions without limitations or exceptions. So that really, in a nutshell, like that is what loving kindness meditation is. It is getting to a state where you are radiating this loving kindness just to all beings in all directions, just no exceptions and no limitations. And so during the time of the Buddha, around 5th century BCE, meditation, it was already an established practice, and it was, something that spiritual seekers were already doing, but it was the Buddha who revolutionized meditation by emphasizing this cultivation of loving kindness and compassion as like this really important part of spiritual development. And then he helped to integrate this into Buddhist philosophy. And the practice of loving kindness meditation, it not only became deeply ingrained into the core teachings of Buddhism, but it's actually one of the 4 immeasurable minds, which in a nutshell, these qualities are considered like essential for overcoming suffering and attaining enlightenment. So loving kindness is one of those, alongside compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. And although loving kindness meditation has this really like rich and deep historical context, I would say that although it's rooted in Buddhist philosophy and practice, it's definitely something that has transcended kind of those religious boundaries, and it's influenced different like secular mindfulness programs, mindfulness practices, and there's a lot of contemporary mindfulness-based approaches that often incorporate loving kindness meditation, whether it's basically loving kindness meditation or it just takes little elements of it. So although it is deeply rooted in Buddhism, loving kindness meditation is everywhere. It is prominent in a lot of different styles, and it is something that is often used in secular mindfulness and meditation practices because it is so good at helping to promote emotional well-being, resilience, and these positive relationships like with others and the self. And loving kindness meditation is one that I have had pop up a lot when I talk to like my therapist or therapists that I've worked with in the past. And when I just talk about like what I do, and, I love meditation, so I talk about it in therapy too. And they're almost always familiar with loving kindness meditation because they use some of those techniques like either in their own practice or it's something that they've studied, just because it is so great at kind of that emotional well-being and like positive relationships. And so when you look at the practice of loving kindness meditation, like modern day, which I forgot to give my little caveat, but that tiny little history lesson of loving kindness meditation, that's like a grain of sand on a beach of like what is to be discovered. That is like the just barely scratching this. That is like the absolute like TLDR of where loving kindness meditation came from. But when we look at kind of modern day loving kindness meditation, it is this practice that's really rooted in cultivating unconditional love, compassion, and goodwill towards ourselves and towards others. So it really involves like this intentional cultivation of kindness and warmth and extending well wishes and blessings to ourselves, to loved ones, to acquaintances, and even those who maybe we have a hard time with, we've had conflict with, or like we don't like for certain reasons. Like a lot of times we'll talk about this a little bit later, I have in my notes, but basically the hardest part about loving kindness meditation is when you are asked to wish someone well that you don't like, either, someone that maybe you don't like for a reason. Maybe they've harmed you. Maybe they are past abusers. Maybe they are just, I don't know, a coworker that really gets under your skin, whatever it is. Sometimes that person that it's hard to radiate to is yourself. Like when you go through sort of these list of people that you will go through when you practice loving kindness meditation and you're radiating this positivity to them, there will be someone where you're like, ooh, that is a little bit harder to do with the same level of intensity and sincerity as it was when I was radiating it to, a dear friend or my pet or a loved one or something like that. But that is basically that conundrum, that struggle. That is the point. It is all about nurturing a sense of connection and belonging and like recognizing this inherent worth and dignity and humanity in all beings, including ourselves and including people that irritate us, drive us nuts, that challenge us, that have hurt us. It's all about recognizing that beneath the surface, and our differences, our individual struggles, our, friction between people, behind all of that there is like this longing and this need and this worthiness of happiness and safety and peace and compassion and kindness. But of course, that's easier said than done. Like I said, there will be someone when you're doing your practice, it's usually either the self or someone that's challenged you that you're like, oh, this one is a little bit trickier. And I have found through my own reflection that when I struggle sending loving kindness to someone, and I have a hard time with that, when I dig a little deeper, it's because I don't want them to feel this good. And like, ooh, that's like a tough thing to say out loud. But when I was first practicing loving kindness meditation, and I'll get to the steps in a little bit. But when I first started practicing loving kindness meditation, I was specifically studying T.W.I.M, which stands for Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation. And that's when I went and I lived with the monks for a little bit, as I lovingly call them, at the Dhammasukha Meditation Center, which we are supporting this month in the Community Mini. So check out that meditation. And also, you heard me, if you listened to the last freeform episode, you heard me like think I was really cool for a second and thought I like upped Dhammasukha, that I upped their like Google numbers, but I don't know if that's true or not. But anyways, I was there and I was studying, and I remember when I was learning the different steps of T.W.I.M, which is similar but not the same as loving kindness meditation. And there was a time where I had to work with this feeling of loving kindness. And then as I was getting deeper and deeper, and I was working with Bonte, and I was getting to a deeper part of my meditation, he said, okay, today work on radiating this feeling to people that have challenged you and then people who have hurt you. And basically his advice was, you can start small with someone who's just kind of like irritating, or you just don't, they kind of rub you the wrong way, or you maybe someone who it's like, yeah, like, they used to bother me, or we had conflict in the past, but like you're kind of over it, like start small. But then I had to work up to the people that had harmed me, like people that I like don't even want to think about. And it was just so hard for me to do that, to like radiate with the same level of sincerity, to send those warm fuzzies to those people. And I sat with that a lot. And I sat with that and like, why is that so hard? And the conclusion that I came to is like, I don't really want them to be happy, at least not in that moment. Like when I was first starting my journey, I was like, you know what? Like they hurt me. And so I don't want them to feel good. And that's definitely like a shadow that I have been working with and, shedding light on. And it was actually through my practice of loving kindness meditation that it opened my eyes, this idea of like, we do all, we do all deserve this kindness and this love, and we do all have a longing for it. And so while that person may be sort of the villain in my story, I'm most likely the villain in someone else's story, whether I know it or not. And they have villains in their own stories. And it's like, we're all just doing our best with what we have. And that's not to like excuse any like really bad, like awful behavior. But when I was thinking about like, why is this so hard? Why is it so hard to like wish these people well? Is because I didn't really want to, because I was so attached to how they had hurt me. And if you've heard me talk about forgiveness before, you know that my personal belief around forgiveness is that like forgiveness is for the self. It's not for that person. It's basically saying like, I forgive you. I'm not going to carry around the weight of your bad actions anymore. And I came to that conclusion of like, forgiveness is really for the self. It's not for the other person. Like I could, forgive someone, for example, because you guys hear me talk about this, sometimes you guys know that there was a time where I was working at a yoga studio and it was an unhealthy and unsafe environment. And this individual did things that's like not at all okay, completely like inexcusable. And however, when I work on forgiveness for that individual and I find myself being triggered by that individual, I have to remember and remind myself that the forgiveness is for me, and it's releasing like my burden of carrying around that person's bad actions. Like I don't want that to impact my life anymore. I don't want it to, I know I shared this in a previous episode, but there was a time in which I wouldn't buy a particular color for my kids because this yoga studio had a very like distinct, bold color. And I was like, I don't even want to look at that color. And I wouldn't dress my kids in that color because it was like upsetting to think about that situation on my kids. I don't know. It just, we don't know how our traumas and our life stuff is going to manifest. That's how it manifested for me. And the way that I was really working through that and the way that I was working on releasing those feelings was through loving kindness meditation and returning to what I learned when I was learning this practice, and how everyone has this longing and does have, a desire to feel good, to be loved, to be cared for. And if I want to be the person that I want to be, I want to learn how to radiate loving kindness to that person. Even if it's hard, I want to learn how to do it, and I want to challenge myself to do it. And so that's what I worked on and what I continue to work on. And I just think that there's something really special and really beautiful with the philosophy of loving kindness meditation and kind of this interconnectedness between people. And that's just something that once you start practicing loving kindness meditation, you know how they say hurt people hurt people. And I do really believe that that's true. Like, even when I think about, this individual that, I really don't think that much about them, except for it's just the example that I usually use on this podcast of like a really tough person and situation that I've worked through. Like, that person was hurting. They were definitely hurting. And their reaction to being in a bad place was to hurt others, including me. And I don't want to be that person. And so that is one of the reasons why I love loving kindness meditation so much, is because I feel like it really softens my edges. It really helps me to open my heart and to kind of work through some of those tougher relationships and to just be the person that I want to be. Not that I do it perfectly every time. I certainly don't, but it really helps me in those tough moments. And for me, loving kindness meditation was really like the gateway to forgiveness meditation in a way, or learning really how to forgive. And that was something that was really powerful for me. So looking at the actual steps of loving kindness meditation, like how do you do, if you wanted to pause me right now or in a few minutes after I walk through these steps and practice loving kindness meditation, how would you do it? This is what you would do. The first thing that you're going to do is you're going to set your intention. So you're really just going to set the intention of, sharing or developing loving kindness towards yourself and to others. And one thing that I meant to mention earlier, and I did not, but this first step is reminding me of, I personally struggled with sending loving kindness to people who have hurt me. However, I know that it is very common for many people. I've heard this from my students all the time, that they have a harder time sending the loving kindness to themselves. And I think that what that's about is something similar to, like, if someone's really hurt you and you're like, you know what, I don't want them to feel good. I think that's like our natural, like, human reaction. Like, you hurt me, I don't want you to feel good. I think that when we really struggle to send the loving kindness to ourselves, it is because we don't think we're worthy of it. And like, we don't think that we deserve it. It's really easy for us to send them to our best friends, our loved ones, our pets. But then when it's to us, it's like, but why aren't we worthy? And it's almost easier sometimes to be like, oh, well, I know. It's easy for me to know why I don't think that person is that worthy of loving kindness. Like, they were really mean to me, or they did this horrible thing to me. But I think it just hurts and is a struggle on a different level when we feel that way towards ourselves. And I just wanted to mention that because I know that that is a really common thread. And if that is something that when you're working with loving kindness, or you do Sunday's meditation and you're like, the hardest person to radiate to was myself, sit with that, lean into that, dig deeper into that, inquire why. And I'd be willing to bet that there's a piece that it's like, you don't feel like you deserve it, or you don't feel like you're worthy of it. And that is so not true. That is like the farthest from the truth. You do deserve it. You are worthy of it. Absolutely. And maybe what that looks like is leaning into the tough, and every day spend just a few minutes awakening that loving kindness and sending it to yourself. I really feel from my own experience that loving kindness meditation gets easier and stronger over time. And what I mean by that is if there's someone that you're having a hard time radiating to, whether it's someone external or the person within, the more that you work on sending them that feeling, the easier it gets and the more powerful it becomes. And it's almost kind of like lifting weights, right? You can't go to the gym and pick up like one heavy weight and like lift it one time and be like, wow, I gained so much strength. Like if anything, you're just going to hurt yourself. It's like you start with the light weights and you do a few reps, and then over time you get stronger, and then maybe heavier weights or, more reps. Like loving kindness is like that, where you just stick at it and you will begin to kind of build that strength over time. All right, going back to the steps. So first thing, setting your intention of sharing, cultivating loving kindness with yourself and others. Then, this one's kind of like, we'll say the 1.5 step, but like finding a comfortable position, making sure that your body can be both like relaxed but alert at the same time. And what I mean by that is you're not clenching, you're not like so alert that you're like, oh, like squeezing, clenching your body, but you're not so relaxed that you're going to fall asleep. Then you're going to awaken the feeling of loving kindness. I think of this as like striking the match of loving kindness. Like you get that initial spark that like, oh, light it up of loving kindness and like what that feels like. The way that I was taught to activate this, if it was tough at first, was think about the feeling when you see like a puppy or like a new baby or like, when you see something that's just like so like sweet and wholesome and you're like, oh my gosh. And you get kind of that like warm, fuzzy feeling. It's that. And so think about something that gives you like those warm fuzzies, and that really kind of gets that loving kindness going. And then you begin by cultivating and radiating loving kindness towards yourself. So you direct it towards yourself, and usually you will say phrases like, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be well, may I be safe, may I live with ease, things like that. You'll usually kind of awaken this feeling and then send it to yourself and send some of these well wishes, right? May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be whole, whatever it is. Then you're going to extend that farther. And after you've done some work with the self, you're then going to start sending loving kindness to others. And you will send it to someone where it's really easy to send it to. So a dear friend, a family member, your pet, someone where it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like I want them to feel great. You'll do that. Okay, I'm going to pause us for 1 second to let us know that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So if you had an extra hour in your day, what would you do? Honestly, I would practice loving kindness meditation. After talking about it for like half an hour, I can firmly say that's what I would do with my extra hour. I would like go for a walk and practice loving kindness meditation. And the thing is that we spend so much time just wishing that we had more time. But the question is, time for what? Like if you had unlimited time, how would you actually use it? And I think something that's really great, at least for me in therapy, something that helped me change my perspective about time is that you only have a set amount of time. Your time is finite, but it's what you decide to put in that time that's important. Like what's the priority? And that it's important to do more things that make you feel good and less things that do not make you feel good. So maybe that is carving out meditation time, going for a walk, something else. Like when my therapist helped me kind of put that all together, it really changed my perspective on time. And so if you're thinking about giving therapy a try, maybe you should consider BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And it's just, therapy's great. It really is. So learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/minutes today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/minutes. This episode is also brought to you by Sleep Cream. So if you are having a hard time sleeping, which I know a lot of you are because you are always listening to those sleep meditations, but there is an answer, and it is not an over-the-counter drug or a prescription or alcohol or anything like that. It is a cream, and you rub it on at bedtime. So simple. It's in the name, Sleep Cream. Sleep Cream is infused with all-natural CBD, which allows your body to get what it's craving, which is a restful night's sleep. And they use organic oils and plant extracts, and it works. All you do is rub it in at bedtime and experience this unbelievable, blissful results. And what's cool, Sleep Cream CBD reacts with the skin's nerve receptors rather than going into the bloodstream. So it helps your body relax and do what it's supposed to do when it's supposed to do it. And because there's no THC, there won't cause like a high or any kind of like a failed drug test or anything like that. And I had my husband try it, and we actually put it on his back because his muscles are tight there, but he has a hard time sleeping because he has a busy brain. And he told me that he felt like he could just kind of like ease into sleep. And he said he slept really well after using it, which is for him like amazing. And Sleep Cream wants you to try it for yourself. So some of their customers have said that they changed their lives, their words, and they would love to send you a bottle if you're willing to try it for a couple of nights just to see how it works for you. And if you don't experience better sleep, they'll refund your money, simple as that. So you can go find them at sleepcreme.com. That's sleepcreme.com. That is where you can get your great sleep, sleepcreme.com. That's sleepcreme.com. All right, continuing on with our steps here of loving kindness. So after we send it to someone that we really care about, that it's easy to send it to, then you're going to send it to someone that you are neutral towards. So that could be the person that you see at the coffee shop. It could be a neighbor, the postman, anyone that you're like, I don't really have any strong feelings one way or another. You're going to send it to them with the same level of intensity and sincerity. And then after that, you will expand it even further. This is where you will start to send it to the tricky people. These are the ones where you will maybe have a harder time sending it to them with that same level of intensity at first because they are challenging people or they get under your skin or whatever it is. But you're going to try your best. And I think the advice of don't pick like the biggest baddie right off the bat, like start small with someone who's just like maybe a little irritating and work on that for a while, really build up kind of that loving kindness muscle. And then eventually, after you work with those challenging people, you're going to try to expand it again, where you're radiating loving kindness to all individuals, like everyone, everything. Like you are this, like, I think of it like this kind of energy ball of loving kindness, and you're just radiating and glowing and sending it to all beings all at once. And as you're doing that, allow yourself to just like be present and sit with the feelings and the sensations that arise during the practice. And if you get distracted, you just come back to that feeling of loving kindness and you just kind of enjoy the feeling for yourself and also like radiating it and wishing it for others. And that's really it. Then you close the practice usually with some kind of an intention to continue this on like in your everyday life. But in a nutshell, that is how you do loving kindness meditation. You wake up the sensation, you send it to yourself, you send it to a dear friend, you send it to someone you're neutral towards, someone that challenges you, you try to radiate it to all beings, and then you just sit in that feeling and kind of like bask in the glow of loving kindness meditation, and then you close it. Like I said, loving kindness meditation, like it feels really good to practice it, but one thing that I think is really unique and special about this practice is how well it helps to kind of create this like antidote to your inner critic and to your self-judgment, your self-loathing that we often have in our hearts and in our minds. And it's so good at helping you to cultivate self-compassion and self-love. So those of you that are like, Kelly, how do I work on my self-love? How do I work on accepting myself? How do I work towards self-compassion? I think loving kindness is absolutely the practice to start with because it really helps you just kind of soften like that harsh self-talk. It teaches you to embrace yourself, to be kinder, more accepting towards yourself. And really, this loving kindness, I really do think of it as like a muscle. And over time, it gets stronger and it gets easier. And so I do think that this is a really special, beautiful practice to incorporate for anyone, but especially if you are struggling with self-talk, self-acceptance, kindness with yourself. This can be a really great practice. Or if there's someone in particular that you're feeling like, you know what, I'm ready to let go of these deep feelings that I have towards them, this can be a great practice as well. And of course, we have to dive into the research. And the research does suggest that a regular practice of loving kindness meditation specifically can help lead to, of course, a reduction in stress and anxiety that we know meditation just in general helps with that. But loving kindness meditation specifically seems to help with the enhancement of positive emotions like joy, gratitude, empathy. And then people who practice loving kindness or metta meditation report having this improvement in their interpersonal relationships and also kind of like their general social connectedness. So people who practice loving kindness meditation tend to strengthen their relationships, like just feel more connected to human beings. And I have to say, like, it is really hard, again, going back to hurt people. Like when you practice loving kindness meditation, it's really hard to do a loving kindness meditation and then like turn around and like be a jerk to someone else. Cause you're just kind of in this like, you feel so good and you want everyone to be happy and you're wishing all these people well and wishing them like happy, easy lives, including yourself. And then it's really hard to like turn around and be harsh with someone because you're just in such a great, like positive mindset. So that's always great. And the research also suggests that this is a really great practice to help boost self-esteem, resilience, and overall well-being. And I personally can attest to that as well. I really think that when I was working on my self-love journey, my self-acceptance, my getting to know myself journey, that loving kindness meditation was a really integral part of that process because I had to not only sit and reflect with some of these, you know, shadowy sides, some of these things where like when I say out loud, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like that I thought that. But like people who've hurt me, I'm like, no, I don't want them to feel good. Like that's kind of my human reaction. But then also being like, why is it easier for me to send all of this love to my best friend, but like it's tough to send it to me? And I think it really gave me an opportunity to sit and look inward as to why I was having those unique challenges and struggles. This is also a really great practice for any age. This is a practice that I think is great for adults, but it's also a really beautiful practice to share with children. So any of my teachers or parents or grandparents, anyone that's listening and you're wanting to share meditation with the children in your life, this is a really great practice to share with them because this is one of those things that I think about often. It's like, what if I would have had these tools in my toolbox 20 years ago when I was a teenager? Like, what if I sat with, these feelings of why is it hard to wish this person well? Or if I was sitting and kind of getting into this loving kindness bubble when I was younger instead of really having to work through it and build it up as an adult. And it's also something that I think resonates with children because of how good it feels. It's not necessarily a particularly complex style of meditation, and like it just feels good. Kind of like when you do something good and nice for someone, it feels good. And like kids really get that. They really latch on. I think this is one of the really, I think there's a lot of really beautiful things about like children and childhood and like their innocence, but I think it's so special like when kids realize that like doing something nice and good for someone else like feels good in their heart. And I think that this style of meditation kind of awakens that feeling too. And there's a lot of really great resources. There's books, like everything from like board books to, like workbooks for older kids, a lot of really easily accessible, like loving kindness meditation resources out there for kids. But if you just want to do like a really quick introduction, I like to sit with kids and ask them like what makes their hearts like feel happy or like what gives them like the warm fuzzies, and even talking about like that feeling. They may not necessarily understand the concept if they're young of like what loving kindness is. I was actually, when I was writing these notes for this episode, I was sitting and Poppy was taking a nap and Pork Chop was eating his lunch, and I was working and writing these notes, and Pork Chop and I were kind of like chatting a little bit because he is 3, you guys, and he like talks. I don't even know. It's like what nothing prepares you for like when you get to the point when this, I felt like I just gave birth to him and now I'm having like conversations with him. But we were just kind of talking and about, what I was working on. And I was like, oh, mom's working on some notes about loving kindness meditation. And we are just kind of talking, like he doesn't understand like the word loving kindness meditation or like the concept. But I was like, it's this thing where, your heart feels really like warm and happy. And we're just kind of talking about like what makes your heart happy. And I kept, placing my hands like on my heart. We've been doing it now as I'm talking about it because it's natural. I'm like, when I talk about the warm fuzzies in the heart, I kind of just like place my hands on my chest and I just like, oh, it just feels good. I was talking about that. And he was like, then he put his hands on like his heart and then he asked me to rub his tummy. But so I think we didn't quite get there today because he was like, oh yeah, like that feels really good, like warm fuzzy for your heart. Oh, also, can you rub my tummy too? That would be nice. But, I think that they understand that feeling. They get it. And when you teach them that that is a feeling that they can send to themselves, and, pork chop is still young. So really the part of the brain that is the most developed right now is kind of like me center of the brain, the part where he understands kind of like how his actions like impact other people. It's still developing, but once he gets a little bit older and he understands that like he can share that feeling with others or like make other people feel that feeling, it's just this really special, beautiful thing. And I think it's so important. I mean, like, especially right now in this world that just feels often like so divided and fragmented and scary and sad. It's like this can kind of offer a pathway for opening our hearts, for recognizing like shared humanity, our capacity to bring love and healing into the world. This is something that I think is really powerful of all ages, but children as well. And it's just something that I think is just, it's really special. Can you guys tell that I like this practice? I do. And now a couple of teachers that you may or may not know are loving kindness meditation teachers or have foundations in loving kindness meditation. The first is Sharon Salzberg. I'm sure you know, she is known for her work in loving kindness meditation or meta meditation. She shared a practice on this feed. She did a guest meditation on Mindful in Minutes for that. And she's definitely like a really prominent figure in the loving kindness meditation world. So she is one. She has books that she's written on loving kindness meditation. Jack Kornfield is another. That's, a lot of people are familiar with his work. He helped to he was one of the co-founders of the Insight Meditation Society, also with Sharon Salzberg. He has books like The Wise Heart, A Path with Heart. He has some really beautiful work on loving kindness meditation. Tara Branch, that is another one. I know there's a lot of overlap in listeners from her podcast and my podcast, which is amazing. And she is a clinical psychologist and a meditation teacher, and she kind of integrates elements of mindfulness and compassion like into her teachings and offers some guided meditations and talks on loving kindness. But she's another really great teacher who has foundations in loving kindness meditation. And then Joseph Goldstein, he's really well known for kind of his Buddhist teachings and meditation practices and work in loving kindness meditation, also part of the Insight Meditation Society. So those are some teachers that maybe you have listened to or read their books and may or may not have realized that they have kind of this foundation in loving kindness meditation. And so the last thing that I wanted to touch on were some of the differences, but also similarities between T.W.I.M and loving kindness meditation. So you've heard me talk about T.W.I.M. Again, that's an acronym, stands for Tranquil Wisdom Insight Meditation. And they both share roots in these Buddhist contemplative traditions, and they incorporate elements of loving kindness. And I would say that, I know. So when I was studying with Bhante, he had studied traditional loving kindness meditation and also Vipassana meditation. And then from that, he had developed kind of this T.W.I.M method. And this is where, when I was staying with them, I had some of these really profound experiences, not only what I can describe as like profound shifts in my own self-love, but profound shifts in like forgiveness and releasing the actions of others. And this was when I had some of my most profound, like deep meditation experiences. Like, I thought I had been sitting for 15 minutes meditating, but it had been like almost 2 hours, and I definitely wasn't asleep. It was just like time moved differently. And then times where it felt like time like stood still. And I remember at one point, and this is one of the key differences between the two practices. So TWIM incorporates walking meditation as well. So you'll sit for a while and then you'll get up and you'll go for a walk. And I just remember feeling just this beautiful experience. Like what I'm about to say, it's going to sound like I was like on drugs or something. Like I took mushrooms. I did not. I just was just doing my thing. I was just riding the high of loving kindness meditation. And I was like walking, and where I was at, it's like kind of in the woods, and they have like, some animals. They had like little goats and stuff, and like some simple paths you could walk. And I was just like walking the path, and I had this vow of silence for like a week at this point, and I wasn't allowed to like read or journal or do anything, and I just was like walking, and I felt like I was radiating loving kindness to like the pebbles in the ground through my shoes. And I was just like, the leaves are so green and beautiful. And I was like radiating loving kindness. I was like, all the little ants that I can't see and all these little beings that are all around, like just radiating loving kindness in like all directions. I just felt like this little bubble that I was walking through. And something that was really profound for me was not only the silence piece, which doesn't have anything to do with loving kindness, but I think that's part of the reason why everything really clicked for me, was because I really did remove myself from like communication and like just noise in general, and just focused on my meditation. But I remember as I was having this particular walk where everything was just like so good, and I was just radiating loving kindness, and I just felt so content. I wasn't thinking about what was coming up later that day. I wasn't thinking about what I did a week ago. I wasn't like, oh, I wonder like what's going on back home, or I wonder when I, turn on my phone, like how many messages will there be? I wonder what's, trending on social media. No, I was just walking and like living and loving life and radiating loving kindness. And it was just like, just the most peaceful contentment that I'd ever experienced. And it was just so simple and so good. And that walk will just stick with me, because it was almost one of those things where it's like I snapped out of it for a second, where I was like, oh my gosh, like, whoa, like what is going on? Like this is just, and this was at like the beginning of my meditation journey. And so I was definitely not as comfortable with just being or practicing, intentional contentment, things like that. I wasn't really doing that. I was just starting to dabble, and it was like just so profound. I like snapped out of it for a second. I was like, what is going on? Like, this is incredible. And I don't know how else to describe it other than I was just so content, just so peaceful, just walking and enjoying. And it's so easy and so simple. It took me days to get there. And it was through, a lot of ups and downs. It was through trying to send love to myself and tears with that, a lot of frustration trying to forgive and send loving kindness to certain, individuals. And I don't know, it's just, there's something about incorporating like that walk that really put everything into place for me, of like just how peaceful, and that idea of just kind of being and radiating to all beings as you were walking. It was just a really powerful experience. And so that's a big difference, is, loving kindness meditation in general, it doesn't really have like a guideline around like walking meditation, but like TWIM, it's like in there, like in the protocol, like you get up, you go for these walks. Also, I would say that between TWIM and loving kindness meditation, like TWIM kind of focuses more on like tranquility and like kind of getting to that, just like I described, like that peaceful, deep, tranquil state, where loving kindness really focuses on like the actual feeling of loving kindness and like sending it to yourself and to others and like radiating that. It's like the focus is the sensation of loving kindness meditation, where TWIM, sometimes the focus is like using loving kindness to get to that kind of tranquility, deeper like contentment space. I think TWIM is a little bit different too, because it does also have roots in Vipassana meditation, which if you listen to my last episode, the kind of trending topics, you heard me talk about Vipassana meditation, where we know now from, my very, very brief history of loving kindness meditation, like this goes back to the Buddha. And so it kind of weaves those two elements together to create TWIM. And then the last difference that really sticks out to me is kind of how I feel when I practice the two, and how I feel differently. When I practice regular loving kindness meditation, it feels like an outward expression. It feels, you can't see me right now because this is a podcast, but it feels like outward. Like I'm taking my hands like from my heart center and then like pressing them outwards, where T.W.I.M feels like a turning inward and more of like an internal work for me. They feel different when I practice them. I love them both, but I feel different. Like loving kindness just feels like this, creating this big love bubble and spreading it all around, where T.W.I.M to me feels like turning inward and doing some deeper work. And that's just, I don't know, that's the only way that I know how to describe it when I feel it, is that they just feel different. I feel like I'm turning inward and gazing inward with T.W.I.M, and then I feel like I'm doing more of like an outward expression of like my love and connectedness with loving kindness meditation. I think both are great. Both are useful and important, but to me, they do feel a little bit different when I'm practicing them. But yeah, I'm looking over my notes here, my little outline. I think that's pretty much it for loving kindness meditation. Like I said, if you have been feeling, whether it's the eclipse or maybe you just have a lot going on in life right now and you've been feeling like a little, like I even just feel better just being able to talk about this thing that I love for like an hour. But give loving kindness meditation a try. It really does make you feel better. And, maybe you one day could be in perfect peace and contentment, just like floating and radiating loving kindness to all beings. Or maybe you just will not be as annoyed by your coworker that gets under your skin the next time that you see them. One last thing that I will say is loving kindness meditation is really like you can do it in the moment. It's actually like one of the techniques that I put in meditation for the modern family. Like when you're feeling like triggered and heated and you're like, oh, like just try to stop, hit the pause button if you can, and try to just activate a little bit of loving kindness. Even if it's like a speck, it will help stop you from boiling over. I promise. It will, if you can even get a tiny bit of activation of loving kindness. And again, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. But when you feel yourself getting like heated, getting triggered, getting activated, and then you're just like, oh, and then just pause button and try to activate a little bit of loving kindness, it really does help stop you before you kind of like blow your lid. So that is loving kindness meditation in a nutshell. Not necessarily a super complex style of meditation, but I think it's just a really beautiful practice that's super accessible. It feels good, and I think it's really powerful. So I will be leading you through a traditional, it is not a T.W.I.M practice, it is a traditional loving kindness meditation on Sunday. I hope that you love that one and that you enjoy it. Like I said, it's a little bit longer, so I can always tell if people like it or not, depending on how many times it's been listened to. So we shall see. And that is it. That is all that I have for you. Thank you so much for being here and letting me share what I love. And I hope that whatever you are doing, wherever you are, that something good happens to you today. So thank you for being here. Make sure you're subscribed in case your phone unsubscribed you. And that's it. Okay, bye.